Okay, so I'm looking to wrap up the first phase of this walk cycle, and a couple of things that we're missing is currently my lighting is okay. The environment hasn't really been considered, and I'll take that into account, but I won't demonstrate everything that's going to go into that. We'll take into account everything that we covered in the 3D design class and some of the stuff that we talked about in staging the bouncing ball project. But when I hit play, I have a lot more character than I did in the previous presentations, but it's still a little stiff. And there's a couple of things that I can do to correct for that. And that is, when I hit play, a couple things are happening. The whole upper body remains stiff. And so what I want to start to do is I want to start to shift the shoulders or the torso back and forth, left and right. I also want to get the head to bounce a little bit and maybe, you know, get a little bit more of a wobble going here with the walk. Now this is really just kind of open for interpretation. There's a number of different ways to do this, and everyone's going to have their own character to their walk cycle based on some of the variables that they introduce here. But if you keep it really simple, make sure that you increment your file versions along the way, and you can go back and you should have a little bit of fun with this. So I'm gonna just tweak a few of the rotations here on the upper body and the head, and we'll see what we come up with. So I just paused the video just for a moment. I got up and I walked around the room just to get a sense of what my shoulders are doing as my feet, relative to the position of my feet. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to identify the upper body. Okay, so I have my upper body selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a real subtle rotation. I'm just going to maybe rotate maybe 10 degrees in one direction. And what I'm doing is I'm taking the arm that's forward and rotating towards the foot that's forward. Okay, and so I'll mark that keyframe. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm going to wait until I get that other foot all the way in the extreme opposite cycle here. And I'll just rotate back 20 degrees. So it's 10 degrees back to the 0 position and another 10 degrees on top of that. And I'll mark that keyframe. And I'll advance the play it all the way to the end, and I'll rotate this another 20 degrees, and I'll mark that keyframe. And just with a couple of quick rotations, so now I get a little bit more character to the walk. The head's starting or the shoulders are starting to move left and right, and that's starting to carry the head left and right. And I could straighten out the head a little bit, but I kind of like the direction that it's gone. And so the other thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to cause the head to bob up and down a little bit. So in order to get the head to bounce up and down, I'm going to go in here and try to figure out where my head is. So inside the upper body, I'm going to grab the neck, and I believe I'm going to use the neck. And the neck is going to be the thing that bounces up and down. And so this is going to take a little bit of experimentation, but basically what I think that I'll start with is every time that the foot is planted into the ground, what I want kind of the shock of the foot hitting the ground to cause the head to bob forward a little bit. And so I can always go back and undo this, but it is important that I'm keeping track of the object that I have selected. So right now I'm rotating the neck, and what I don't want to do is I don't want to rotate the neck and then go back and try to rotate the head. I want to keep all of my rotation on just the one object. Just like I did with the torso, if I go back to my upper body, when I select it now I can see the keyframes, and if I need to, I can go through and get rid of all the keyframes on just the upper body object, or I can go back and fix the rotations. So I want to make sure that however I'm controlling this object, I'm tuning into what object in the object manager I have selected. Now right now this model is relatively simple. There's 14, 15 moving parts here. We're actually only moving a handful of them, but there's 14 parts that we could move, maybe more. And so I just want to keep track of the things that I'm selecting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to rotate it forward, and I'm really going to exaggerate this just to see what I end up with. So I'm going to roll it forward by 20 degrees. I'm going to mark the keyframe, and I'll advance the playhead. And now I think what I'm going to do is about halfway through. So I know the other foot is going to strike the ground right at about 15. So probably halfway through, I'm going to rotate this back 20 degrees in the opposite direction, or I'll rotate it a total of 40 degrees, right? So I'm compensating for that first 20 degrees that I rotated in the forward direction, and an additional 20 degrees in the opposite direction. That might be a little too much, but we'll see. So I'm going to rotate that again all the way forward, now by 40 degrees, as that front foot contacts the ground. And I'll just advance about 8 more frames. Again, so I'm really not even necessarily counting the frames, I'm just cutting the animation in half. And then again back 40. And I'll record. Now I'll hit the rewind button and I'll play. And now the head's bobbing a little too much for me, but so maybe 20 degrees was a little extreme. But maybe, maybe I like the character of it. So it does add a lot of character to this animation now that I have that extreme or that exaggerated rotation. Maybe he's listening to some music. He's got his iPhone or his iPod plugged in, and he's rocking away. So anyway, you can see how a little bit of a rotation along these things really adds a lot of character. So in terms of the straightforward animation, experiment with this. What we're looking to do is to do a straight, simple walk cycle, and I would consider this walk cycle rendered out to be more or less complete. Now, I would want to take into account the arms, and I might want to experiment with a couple of other things, and I would encourage you that maybe you don't want to stop with this as the model. I wouldn't recommend that you try to model something completely organic. But maybe you worked on a robot in a previous 3D class, or maybe you're working on one right now, and you want to integrate that into this project. That's fine too. At the very least, definitely come up with this model with the walk cycle. Now, once you complete the straightforward walk cycle, take a crack at an alternate walk cycle. So if you go into the Blackboard, the class site, and if you go into 03, the walk project, and if you scroll down and look for the walk cycle reference by Preston Blair, and you click on the link, take a look at this, and there's different kinds of walk cycles. There's strut, shuffle, sneak. Pick one of these walk cycles, and based on this reference, try to complete something other than a straightforward walk cycle. Maybe you'll do a sneaky walk, take the exact same model that you have, save the model that you're working on, pull all the animation out of it, or just tweak the animation that you already have. So right now we broke down the animation based on 30 frames, and you can go back in, and right now the rough animation is mapped out. You have one straightforward walk cycle. Now that walk cycle, if I want to go back through and try to tweak that based on this reference, I'll just jump back in. I could map out this sneak and really kind of modify my walk cycle based on the rhythms that I've created to reflect or emulate what Preston Blair is suggesting as a sneaky walk. Or maybe try a run. So pick an alternative walk cycle that's referenced here and take a crack at it and have fun with it. Now, I'm going to push forward with these presentations and add a couple of other concepts to this, and we'll catch up in the next presentation.